Welcome to Leadership Development for Managers Masterclass. I am just going to pull up the slides here and we will hop into it. Just bear with me for 1 second here. Perfect. So the topic today is on how to increase talent readiness and team alignment to increase leadership effectiveness. So the objectives for this hour are to share with you what we have observed as a leadership development boutique firm as the top leadership challenges, primarily at the middle management level and emerging leader level. We'll share with you a bit on our inspired leadership development framework, which is our competency model in terms of how we coach and train on leadership. And we'll share with you a few case studies, client case studies that kind of show how this all comes together, practically speaking. And finally, some statistics and studies in terms of how leadership effectiveness drives performance. And we'll give you a sneak peek to our public leadership skills development program, which starts in October. So in terms of an introduction, Power Up Leadership, if you're not familiar with us, we're based in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. We've been in business for 7.5 years. And our big, hairy, audacious goal is to create 1 million inspired leaders by 2033. So this is something that we track in terms of every leader that comes through one of our leadership development programs. And in terms of who I am, I'm the founder and CEO. My name is Susan Power, and I'm a professional certified coach as well as CHRP as well. And I've spent 25 years in the organizational development space and really got interested in coaching when I noticed during my corporate days that it took a while for new people managers really to be comfortable with this entirely new skill set of leading and managing a team. And many struggled, as did, senior leaders as well, who had been in that type of role for more years. So I ended up getting certified as a coach through International Coaching Federation, which is the global body that has different coaching credentials. And since then, have logged 3,500 paid coaching hours working with over 500 organizations. So the focus today is really to talk a bit about our inspired leadership methodology and what key behaviors drive performance and what makes for leadership effectiveness. How is that really built and practiced in day-to-day working world? So we created a fuller public program on this that I'll give you a sneak peek later in the webinar, but the fuller program goes into much more detail in terms of the strategies and frameworks. And it really comes down to team transformation because a team can really not exceed the strength or as cannot exceed the strength of its leader. It just permeates the culture of an organization and the team dynamics. John Maxwell, leadership expert, calls it the law of the lid, that a team and an organization's performance will never exceed the capabilities of the leader. So that's why it really matters. So this is a snapshot from a study that Gartner performed where they had surveyed 141 HR leaders. And one of the key takeaways from it was that despite the investment, many internal leadership development programs are not delivering. And I personally believe this is because it's part of the portfolio of HR professionals, and they have a lot of priorities on their plate if you think of an HR generalist in particular. So Gardner discovered that 76% of organizations were making significant updates or had made significant updates in the past 2 years to their leadership development programs to try to increase the ROI, whereas 24% had not made such significant updates. And HR leaders also, it was found in the same study, lacked confidence in leadership effectiveness, with 36% of HR leaders thinking that their LD programs are effective at preparing leaders to face future organizational challenges. And that's one of the reasons I personally believe that coaching goes so well hand in hand with leadership development training because it's very much personalized application of the content, which increases the ROI from these programs. Lastly, from this Gartner study, 23% of HR leaders are confident that their organization has rising leaders who can meet the future needs. So, in terms of the pipeline, so lots of work to do to improve the effectiveness of LD programs in organizations. So marrying this up with coaching is, again, one strategy to increase the ROI. If you're not familiar with coaching, ICF, International Coaching Federation, defines coaching as partnering with clients in a thought-provoking creative process to inspire them not only to maximize their professional potential, but also their personal potential. Because we know that how you show up outside of work, you cannot compartmentalize it. It very much impacts how you show up at work. If you think of things like emotional regulation, stress management, communication, it really influences how you're going to communicate to your team, your values. So the better leader you can be in your family, your community, it will only benefit your organization. So that is really, I guess, one reason we developed our public program for leadership development. We really are focusing on that middle manager, new people manager, to help support them become more confident, adaptable, and inclusive in terms of driving performance for their team and for themselves. So increasing that alignment across their organization so they can achieve their goals. And I'm really excited. It's the second year we're offering this because it's much more accessible when you're part of a public program in terms of the cost of registering for something like this than it is a private program. So we can get closer to reaching our goal of 1 million inspired leaders by having a public program in place. And by the end of the program, I know I saw it last year when we rolled it out, the result increased productivity, reduced turnover, a higher quality pipeline of emerging leaders, and really focusing on establishing the standards of continuous improvement, of always trying to improve a little bit each day to help managers navigate those challenges and increase innovation in organizations. We also do this program privately as well. And Sally, a finance manager at CAA Atlantic, one of our clients, came through the program, and she was the perfect example for this because she was new to people management at the time and really found that it was very practical in terms of the takeaways she identified in the coaching sessions and found a lot of value through the Inspired Leadership program. Few other testimonials. So I want to share with you a few client case studies that show this in action. So the classic challenge of how to delegate. You may have observed this in your own organization where managers shy away from delegation. Maybe they have a bad experience with it, and then they decide to really do a lot of their team's work or at least the complex, higher risk items themselves. So one thing that works really well to foster better delegation is the 5 levels of delegation. And it decreases the risk of that manager receiving low quality work back, which then prevents them from delegating in the future. So level 1 of the model is simply do as I say. Here are the instructions, don't deviate from them. Maybe the manager's already done the work of researching the options and determining what it is that the employee needs to do. Now, this isn't the most empowering way to delegate, but it can be really effective if you have a new hire, or maybe the task is brand new to that employee. They don't have the experience level, so it's very clear what it is you need them to do. Level 2, research and report. At this level of delegation, you ask the team member to do the research for you and then to come and have a conversation with you, the manager, to discuss and decide, um, have the manager decide and give you further instructions of which option to go with. At level 3, you're further empowering the manager to research and recommend the best option to go with, considering the pros and cons, and then seeking authorization for the decision from the manager. Level 4, decide and inform. So you're really allowing the employee to take the decision and run with it. You're trusting them that they'll keep you in the loop as needed and pull you in if there's any hiccups along the way. So those are the levels of delegation. They work really well when they're kind of explained to a manager and they're able to decide what fits the team member the best. Another case study, client case study to share with you is team alignment. So I'm sure we've all experienced conflict on a team. One of the often frequent causes is lack of clarification on roles and responsibilities. So sometimes this comes from the manager that they haven't been clear on communicating their vision and purpose of the project to the team and not clearly communicating each team member's roles and responsibilities. And sometimes it kind of shifts as the project goes on. So in this particular example, the client brought it to a coaching call and really determined what they could do to have a conversation when they felt like there was confusion on roles and responsibilities, and to really help the team feel like they weren't spinning their wheels, duplicating work, and how to approach that. So that can be helpful to have a coach to think that through and to really mitigate it in advance where possible. So, in the masterclass today, I would love to share with you 3 secrets of leadership effectiveness. We'll go into these on the next slides in more detail. So, the first one is how to increase managers' agility and resilience to operate calmly in more complex, uncertain environments. So, I'm thinking of a coaching conversation I had this morning with a female middle manager, and they have been acquired, this organization. And often, if you haven't been through an acquisition, it can take quite some time for all the details to be worked through. So the communication lags. And of course, there's concerns about, will I still have a job by the end of the acquisition? What part of my role might change if I'm still working here? Who are my new team members? Will I have a new manager? But the job still needs to be done between announcement of the acquisition and finalization of all the details in terms of impact. So it's so imperative that managers are also feeling this stress, that they are able to still show up, operate calmly, and help emotionally regulate, or coach their team to emotionally regulate where they may be stressed out going through any type of change or change transformation. We know that 63% of managers feel burnt out, and, signs of burnout are consistent exhaustion, energy depletion, um, a continued feeling of negativity towards your job. Sometimes there's feelings of reduced professional efficacy as part of that. You don't feel as capable. And if managers are feeling this way, it becomes contagious on a team, right? So it becomes very important that they have access to those leadership tools like stress management, building resilience, mindfulness, centeredness, and can mitigate conflicts, which often take a lot of energy to have those difficult conversations. So this statistic comes from a Harris poll. It was over 2,000 employees who were surveyed, and 75% of employees felt burnt out and 63% of managers. So definitely leadership skills can help address burnout. The number two secret of leading is that self-awareness is the number one gap in leadership effectiveness across leadership level. And we know this from our own proprietary research that we conducted in January at Power Up Leadership. And it is interesting that this was flagged by leaders that they were very much aware that self-awareness was the gap, but knowing how to fix that is another thing. So coaching is the secret cure for increasing self-awareness because the coach shows up and asks you those difficult questions where you may not have asked yourself and really gives you that safe, trusting space to self-reflect and to bring challenges and to think them through on the call, which the leader, when they really commit to the process, they do the inner work of figuring out, well, what was my role in this? Where was I accountable for these challenges? And then they can try new techniques, adjust their approach, and see what works. So we did develop this public manager leadership development program to support managers to reduce burnout, to increase self-awareness, and to really increase team alignment. And the beauty of it is based on how we structured it, they can take the key learnings from the training, the coaching, go try it out, bring it back to the group, share and learn from each other as managers from different organizations, what went well, where they need to continue to focus, and it becomes digestible micro learning where they can really apply it as they're going through the program. And we know that it results in a stronger pipeline and reaching performance goals. So the business case behind it is the ROI is 4 times ROI in this leadership development program. So the business goals are met more quickly, more efficiently, and with less turnover, and having teams that are able to work together more effectively overall. The third secret I'd like to share with you is that all leaders have multiplier and diminisher leadership traits and habits, even if you are an excellent, excellent leader. And if you haven't read the book Multipliers by Liz Wiseman, it's one of the best leadership books I've ever read. We have a summary, by the way, of our top 30 leadership development books. I've personally read hundreds of them, and we have a summary of our top 30 on our website, powerupleadership.ca, in the menu bar, free resources. If you want to download that resource or some of our other free resources, that's the place to go. But what I mean by this is that one example, a leader can be very effective, but they might have a diminisher leadership trait of pace setting, where they want to go so quickly all the time that it's good to go quick in business. That's definitely act with velocity is one of our core values at Power Up. But if the pace setting isn't appropriate to the activity, or if it's too fast all the time, because there's some judgment that needs to go with moving quickly, it will have a diminishing effect. Or another example, toxic positivity. Sometimes leaders are so positive because that's the mindset they want to instill on the team. But if they don't ever acknowledge how hard something is or acknowledge the negative, it can be a diminisher effect. A multiplier trait would be spending more time listening to the team. So the best multiplier leaders will talk last in a team meeting, get really curious what their team thinks is a solution, and that's because they know how smart their team is. Whereas a diminisher leader might be super smart, but do the opposite. And then the team becomes disengaged because they think, why am I in this meeting? My voice isn't heard. It doesn't feel inclusive, and it has a diminisher effect. So we have built our own proprietary inspired leadership methodology that all our programs and materials are based upon. Our coaches are trained on this method. And I'll just give you a couple examples in terms of what we mean by this. So under master communicator, you can see we define that as including leadership presence, authenticity, and empathy, all very important ways of showing up as a leader. And leadership presence in particular is one I think that a lot of new people, leaders, often need some support on. So, what is that leadership presence? We define it as how you communicate, communicating with energy, edge, passion, and creating connection with an audience by sharing stories. So, in terms of leadership development, how do you instill that in a leader? Coaching questions can help them reflect on how they show up. So, how would you increase your leadership presence? What are your beliefs about saying no? What is your level of confidence? How do you feel about transitioning from a peer to a leader? What are you doing to help your previous peers adjust to you? Now maybe they're reporting into you, for instance, and you have to also maybe change how you see yourself as you're wearing this new leadership role, maybe for the first time. So leadership presence, key leadership competency. Another one that we really focus on, and the impact, I think sometimes it's the lowest hanging fruit for leaders and they get busy and they forget about it, recognition. So really determining and expressing that genuine appreciation for the team so that each team member feels heard, seen, and valued. And as part of team alignment, recognition is key. Empowerment coaching definitely will have a role to play in that. So if you think about how do you train leaders to recognize, really getting them thinking through, well, what do you do today for strengths-based recognition on your team? Doesn't all have to be monetary recognition, right? But how do you assign the work considering individual strengths? Do you even know what your team's strengths are? Do they know what their strengths are? How do you recognize goals when achieved? How do you encourage and reinforce the behaviors that you want from your team, whether it's just verbal recognition or written recognition or monetary recognition? How frequently do you recognize? So I won't go into this in full detail, but this is on our website. It's our full inspired leadership development model with the competencies tied to the 6 core areas. And it comes down to a lot of this, especially from a coaching perspective, is about setting the right focus areas because it's so vast when you think about becoming a stronger leader, and it can't all be addressed at the same time. So, really picking those 2 or 3 areas that can have the biggest impact is really important when going through a leadership development program. So, for instance, one leader from our program last year set a goal around communicate with leadership presence. So, really engaging and motivating the team to execute by communicating in their own authentic style, really showcasing their personality, their sense of humor. So, authenticity was really important to this leader. Another example of a leadership goal is finding the best way to manage a multi-generational team. And this leader in particular really wanted to focus on the preferences of each team member, whether it was around recognition frequency, knowing millennials and Gen Z sometimes prefer more frequent feedback recognition. They wanted to really consider the unique attributes in terms of the generation of their team. So we're going to shift gears a little bit now and talk a bit about how do you make the business case for leadership development in your organization. And the best way I know how to do that is through a 360 assessment to measure your leaders' effectiveness so you have a baseline and can see clearly where the opportunities are. So the vehicle that I like to use is Leadership Circle Profile 360 assessment. And this particular model measures both creative and reactive competencies. And you want to maximize the creative competencies for better leadership effectiveness. So if you think about on the reactive side, which you see on the left, when a problem's identified, a very reactive leader will perceive a threat. They may really get fearful about making a mistake, and they become sometimes more reactive, less strategic, more emotionally driven. So their performance, when it's anxiety driven, can be a bit like a roller coaster, and the results they get fluctuate a lot over time. Versus a more creative leadership approach would be to be very purpose, vision driven, passionate. So again, that leadership presence and how they communicate the goals and purpose, and very action focused in terms of intentional action. So it's all about unleashing the potential of the team in terms of how they lead from a creative space, which gets better business results over time. In this 360 LCP, there's an index that actually measures leadership effectiveness index, and it's made up of these 5 questions. So if you have multiple leaders go through it, you can see organizationally, and if they have high leadership effectiveness, it correlates very positively to the creative leadership dimension. So the questions are right here. I'm satisfied with the quality of leadership that this leader provides. They're the type of leader that others should aspire to become. They're an example of an ideal leader. This leader's leadership helps the organization thrive. And lastly, overall, this leader provides very effective leadership. And you can see from a study that Leadership Circle Profile performed, they looked at business performance index on the y-axis versus leadership effectiveness, which was on a 5-point scale. And the bottom 10% of performing companies, you can see by the trend line, the leadership effectiveness on the low side is all the way over to, it looks like about 2.25 to on the higher side. There's a couple of anomaly data points that are at the 4.5 mark, but the bulk of the data points in the top 10%, the business performance is 6.5 and 7, and the leadership effectiveness is much higher, anywhere between 3.5 to 5.0. So direct linear positive relationship with leadership effectiveness and business performance. Another very powerful leadership effectiveness tool, if you haven't already done it, is DISC, which is a communications preference assessment and is part of our public program. And it helps leaders increase their self-awareness and better understand their preferred way of communicating, whether it's dominance, influence, conscientiousness, and steadiness is the 4 types. I won't go into great detail about what these all mean, but we know that through the work of leaders, DISC assessment, it gives them very concrete steps and actions to increase their vision, their alignment, and their execution, considering their communication style. So this program that we have developed and gotten top reviews on Google Review, it starts mid-October. And I'm going to share with you a sneak peek to what that includes. And it could easily be priced at over 12K USD. We've priced it at 1950 USD. And we know from studies that PricewaterhouseCoopers has performed that the coaching ROI is between 500 to 700%. So we're very confident this program delivers. We've received that feedback from participants who've come through the program. And what it actually includes is 6 50-minute coaching, private coaching sessions virtually with an ICF, International Coaching Federation credentialed coach, which would normally have $3,700 value. It has 6 90-minute, and they're all recorded, 9 hours of virtual training over the 16 weeks, $3,500 value, 2 90-minute group coaching sessions. So 3 hours of group coaching where they can watch an ICF coach in action, receive some coaching, try coaching, $1,500 value, a work of leaders assessment that I shared with you, leadership intake, self-diagnostic, and pre and post learning resources after each coaching call that are personalized for their particular coaching goals. So total value, anywhere between 10,750 USD to 12,000. We've made the investment very accessible at 1950. The actual training topics are listed here. So many of the case studies we shared with you today very much tie into these topics, the top areas that new people managers often struggle with. So I've gone through a lot of what's included in the program. What I have not mentioned is we use a platform called coaching.com, which is our software for coaching, which all participants get access to. So there are micro learning resources tied into that as well. their goal tracking through that platform, scheduling for coaching calls, and a very confidential, secure communication portal for coaches and coachees. We've also created a private LinkedIn community so the conversation can keep going with alumni and during and in between the actual training sessions as well. And of course, they get a certificate that shows they've successfully completed the program, which they can use for PD professional credit hours. So 16 hours, all virtual, blended training and coaching over a 12-week program, starts middle of October. And your leaders who sign up for this will transform into leaders that are able to get team engagement, alignment, influence, and buy-in. So just like the client case study I shared with you earlier about the manager who was refraining from delegating because they had a negative experience with it, so they moved to the 5 levels of delegation, your leaders will learn the best practices around delegation and time management. And just like the other client case study of team alignment, where there was a bit of misalignment due to misunderstanding of roles and responsibilities, your leaders who come through our public program will really learn how to mitigate conflict, and when it does show up, how to have those difficult conversations so it's quickly addressed and the team becomes aligned in communicating openly as well. So really, again, it's intended for people managers leading a team. We've had some emerging leaders go through it that are in the pipeline, and we've had some directors go through it, but the bulk of participants will be at that middle manager level. And it's fun to watch them as they connect the dots through this program and really engage in the conversations. It's very interactive in terms of the activities. So we cover all learning styles as part of it. So they're able to really apply what they learn and learn in the style that best suits their learning style. So they get access to the group coaching, the work of leaders assessment, the private coaching, the 90-minute virtual sessions. If they miss one, they're recorded, so it's not an issue. And they really start right from the beginning, increasing their self-awareness as they reflect on their own leadership, fill out the intake diagnostic and the DISC work of leaders assessment. So I'll just share with you just to wrap up here. I know it can be very scary to move into a middle manager role for the first time. I remember that feeling years ago, and often managers feel like they're expected to have all the answers, and it can be emotionally exhausting for them. So we created this program to help managers build their confidence and accelerate their learning so they can move through the learning curve more quickly. So it's based on our inspired leadership methodology of what are the key behaviors for effective leadership. And your leaders, if they sign up for this program, will increase their confidence by really learning and reflecting on where they are strong and where they need to improve. So 1950 USD, that's equivalent to $2,700 Canadian, is the price point of the program. Is it worth it? If all it did was reduce miscommunication on your team, would it be worth it? If it decreased new manager failure rate, would it be worth it? If it reduced manager burnout, would it be worth it? I think so. We guarantee the investment, so we guarantee your managers after they finish the program will start to see results within 30 days. Price back guarantee. So we have also offered any participants that come through this program, if they register by end of day this Friday, September 19th, 4 p.m. Atlantic, it's a 28% promotion off of the full price, which is 1950 Canadian after the promos, but you have to sign up by end of day this Friday. And we offer corporate rate for 5+ participants. So that is all the content I have for you. Do we have any questions? I don't see any, so thank you. Well, let me just check actually more closely the Q&A. I do not see any questions, so thank you so much for taking the time to attend. If you do have any questions, you can shoot me an email at susan@powerupleadership.ca. And again, check out our free resources on our website. There's a tab in the menu, free resources. We have many different coaching resources there. And I see one of the participants is typing a question here, so I'll give her a second here to type it out. And if you want more information on the paid program, we're going to send it out with the recording of this webinar. It's right on our main website. There is an application link. Just we want to ensure that we have the right fit in terms of the participants coming through the program. Would love to have anyone on this webinar sign up. Thank you, Ling Ling. Yes, appreciate your attendance. Thanks for the information. My pleasure. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks so much.